Hey everyone, welcome back. It is episode 2 of our brand new season, Twisted. And if you missed last week's episode, we are talking all about the dark side of science. So think Frankenstein, some crazy experiments, and basically just like everything dark side, twisted side of science. But before we get into our episode, Liv did something very exciting on the weekend. Do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I had a crazy weekend, guys. Like, the stuff I saw this weekend was insane. I don't think I can say most of what I saw on this podcast, to be honest. But yeah, I took part in my first ever pole dancing comp this weekend, and it was so much fun. But basically, it's like a can I say this on the podcast? Okay, it's an X-rated kind of show, if you get me. And when I tell you, one of the competitors pulled out a wad of cash from
What?
I don't know where it came from. I don't know how she got it out. It was insane. So I had a crazy weekend. I didn't pull any money out of any places.
Orifices.
Don't worry, guys. But I did have a great weekend.
This is news to me. I didn't know it was that X-rated.
Oh, it's like that. Yeah. This is like the biggest X-rated comp in the UK. 100%. I feel like this is like my double life. Like, the listeners are probably like, what the hell is Liv doing on the weekend? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is she doing? Anyway, so that was my weekend. How about you, Taz?
Oh, my weekend was probably just as crazy, actually. I went on
you were on a stag.
Ever stag do. And let me highlight the fact that it was a stag do. So it was like a mixed gender stag do. But oh my God, bear in mind, I just turned 30, guys. I got home at 5 a.m. in the morning. And
Taz, you are like a 21-year-old. I don't know how you do it.
No, I'm not, because my body is still not recovered. I genuinely think that's why I'm nauseous still, like 4 days later. So let me tell you, I'm not sure I would recommend it, honestly. My brain has not functioned for the past week, so.
I mean, that is it. Like, if I drink, I can't function. I drank on the weekend, and I actually, like, as soon as I came off stage, I did a tequila shot. I was like, have a shot ready for me.
I mean, fair.
That's like, nah, that's like a big thing for me. And I fully just I just raw dogged that tequila shot. Nobody else did the shot with me. I just, straight, no salt, nothing.
I don't really like salt, controversial, but give me a lemon slice, fine, but I hate the salt before. Like, no.
I mean, I don't really get
like
any of it.
I don't like the salt on my, like, margarita ring either.
I never get that either. Like, surely none of you guys actually like that. I refuse to believe that any of you actually like it.
Yeah, people do like the salt. I'm like, oh.
It's like, you know, when people say, like, anybody who says they like Aperol Spritz is a liar. That's how I feel about salt on the rim of your glass. Yeah, but you
love Aperol Spritzes.
Oh, I love Aperol. We all know I'm obsessed. I have an unhealthy obsession. Like, I wish it was a non-alcoholic drink, because I would drink it 24/7. Like, I love it.
Yeah, they must do like a non-alcoholic version. I was thinking the other day, like, I would 100% buy a non-alcoholic version of Aperol Spritz, because like you, Liv, it's like I would say it's like my go-to drink. If I'm like, oh, I don't know what I fancy, and I'm like, well, I fancy an Aperol Spritz. Like, it never fails. I never fancy an Aperol Spritz. Like,
I agree. I don't know. We should look into that. Do they do a non-alcoholic version? We need to look into that.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we just talk about Aperols all day, because we both know we could talk about Aperols all day, I think it's about time we get into today's episode. So let's go. Welcome to the So Cultured podcast,
where we explore science and tech unfiltered.
We're your hosts, Liv and Taz, two girls who love STEM and spilling the tea.
Each season, we take on a new theme, whether it's busting conspiracy theories, celebrating women in STEM, or breaking down the science in your favourite sci-fi films.
And of course, in every episode, we spill the laboraTEAAA,
where we share your wildest stories from the world of science.
Let's get into this week's episode of So Cultured.
Okay, so throughout history, stories of humans being raised by animals have fascinated us. Think of Tarzan or even the ancient myth of Romulus and Remus, the twins raised by a wolf. These tales have always tugged at our curiosity about what truly shapes us, nature or nurture. Children, after all, start as blank slates upon which language, culture, and morality are taught as they grow. Child development is one of the greatest feats of learning, and it's captivated both storytellers like Rudyard Kipling, the author of The Jungle Book, and scientists alike.
My God, this sounds so interesting. These kind of stories have always fascinated me as well. Like, I
Mm.
remember learning about some of them in psychology, but I don't know, you kept mentioning Tarzan. Is that based on a true story?
No, obviously, like there's this idea of like feral children, but a lot of them are kind of like not entirely based on the truth. So there was a few children that
Hmm.
were studied scientifically more based on the environment that they were brought up in. So take Victor, he was nicknamed the wild boy of Aveyron, and he was found alone in the forests of France around 1800, and he couldn't speak, he avoided people and didn't seem to understand social cues. Now, a doctor named Jean-Marc Itard took him in and tried to teach him to talk and to essentially live civilized. And Victor learned a few simple words, but he never developed a full language. He showed emotion, but not conversation. And this was an early clue that without human contact, language itself can't form. And this is something that we'll also touch on later. And then there was a more modern case, Jeannie. She was discovered in
Oh my God, yes.
California.
I remember learning about this. This is the case I learned about.
I never did psychology, so I find this super interesting as
Oh my
well.
God, Taz, you're gonna find this whole series like very interesting. For any of our
I
listeners
know.
who like didn't do psychology, there's so many insane things that we'll probably cover in
Yeah.
this season. And then if you've done psychology, like it will be like a blast from the past. You'll love it.
Yeah, I've definitely found it interesting so far. Like, also
Mm.
doing the research, a lot of the like really dark and twisted experiments are like psychology based, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of messed
Mm-hmm.
up. But so Jeannie, she was discovered in California in 1970, and she'd spent almost her entire childhood locked in isolation. So when she was found, she couldn't speak, she walked stiffly and only made like guttural sounds. And scientists tried to teach her words, and she managed to actually learn some, but never really grasped grammar or full sentences. And her case essentially became evidence for the critical period hypothesis, which is that there's a window in early life when we must learn language or we may never fully acquire it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I feel so like nostalgic already just listening to you because I think I've said this on the podcast before, but I absolutely adored psychology A level. So yeah,
Mm,
I remember all of this. But I guess from like what you're saying, there's kind of never actually been, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's never been a proven case of a child like actually being raised by animals, but
mhm.
it's more a case that it's a human child or like a human being deprived of other humans, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. There's been no Tarzan, there's been no like Jungle Book case, like no verified evidence that a child was ever truly raised by wolves or monkey. But then it kind of spurred a real question that if a child deprived of nurture could lose their humanity, could an animal that is given human nurture gain some sort of humanity? And one scientist kind of took that fascination to an entirely new level. So, for today's episode, we're diving into one of the strangest and most unsettling psychological studies ever conducted, and that is the Ape and the Child experiment. So, our story begins in 1930 in Cuba with the birth of a female chimpanzee on the 15th of November. Not long after her birth, the baby chimp and her parents were donated to the Yerkes National Primate Research Center, headed by none other by Robert Yerkes, a eugenicist whose lab specialized
Mhm.
in comparative psychology and medical research. And I feel like, as I said, a lot of the really crazy and dark experiments came from, well, eugenicists and also
Mm,
psychologists around this time, to be honest. So that's pretty
yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
So this baby chimp, she was given the name Gua, and by June 1931, when she was just 7.5 months old, she was torn away from her mother's cage and sent off to a new home, a very
Oh,
unusual home for a chimp. And her new family were two scientists, Luella and the Winthrop Kellogg, and their 10-month-old son, Donald.
oh my gosh. What possesses you to be like, how do you get to the point in life where you're like, okay, I'm going to take in a chimp? Because do you know what? I'm kind of scarred from like last week's episode. So for anyone who didn't listen to last week's episode, we were talking about human head transplants, and we spoke on that episode a little bit about face transplants. And you know what always haunts me is the story of the chimp who mauled. Like it was this.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that? It was this couple who had a chimp and they'd had it for like its whole life, and then basically one day they gave it some Xanax, and then the chimp just went mental and basically like mauled one of their friends' faces. And like, I was going to talk about it in that episode because obviously she ended up having a face transplant. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but like that whole story just haunts me, and
Yeah.
it just makes me think, how do you get to the point in life where you're like, okay, I'm going to bring a chimp into my house and I'm going to raise this chimp?
Yeah, I know, wild. And I think like you've got a 10-month-old son as well. Like that is pretty
Mm,
crazy. But
yeah.
Winthrop and Noella Kellogg, they were a married pair of scientists and they met while studying, and basically they wanted to explore all sorts of psychology research, and Winthrop in particular was obsessed with that one question: how much of who we are comes from nature and how much from nurture. And he wanted to know, if you could completely control the nurture part, could you shape behavior itself and, I guess, completely erase nature, essentially. So during
Okay.
his postgraduate studies at Columbia in 1927, he came up with this daring idea, and it was inspired by the accounts of the feral children raised by wolves. And like, if there were feral children, could the reverse be true? Could an animal raised as a human start to become human? So when he first welcomed his child Donald, he, in my opinion, decided in a wild turn of events that it was the perfect opportunity for a comparative experiment with a baby chimpanzee. Like, imagine having your first child and thinking, yep, this is the greatest opportunity for an experiment. Like, what?
Literally.
It's
Literally.
crazy, isn't it?
That is crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. Imagine telling your friends that story like later on in life, like, oh yeah, when I
I
was
know.
born, my dad just thought this is the great time to see the difference. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch on later life later on,
Ooh, interesting.
and
Okay.
we can see if we feel like it affected them. But yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
Winthrop, he proposed raising a chimpanzee alongside his own son, obviously not as a pet but as a sibling. So the chimp would be fed from a
Rogue.
bottle, bathed, clothed, pushed in a pram, and corrected for mistakes and taught to walk upright, all like a baby human. So she'd also be encouraged to eat with a spoon, play with toys, and learn everything the human way. And to make it happen, the Kellogg's partnered with Robert Yerkes and basically secured a fellowship to work at the Yale Anthropoid Station in Florida. So the Kellogg's packed up their entire lives and moved to Florida, and soon after, Gua joined the family.
Wow. I have thoughts, all of which I will save maybe until the end of the episode because, yeah, I have thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
For the purpose of staying on topic and Liv not going on another tangent, I'm just going to save them. So, yeah, I'm so curious what actually happened when the experiment started. I'm curious to hear about this.
I know, it's like, it's actually wild to think that this was a real thing. But the
Yeah.
experiment began in summer of 1931 when the two infants, Gua at 7.5 months and Donald at 10 months, were introduced to each other. And from that day on, they were treated as equals, raised essentially as brother and sister. Like that was the whole idea. And almost immediately, the Kellogg's began noting differences. So physically, Gua was
Duh.
ahead. She had longer arms, greater agility, and nearly all her teeth, whilst Donald only had 2 teeth. But the real fascination came from the experiments themselves, and some were like quite disturbing, to be honest. The first experiment was Kellogg wanted to compare their bone development. So he literally hit both children on the head with a spoon to hear the differences in their skull
What?
hardness. So Donald's skull made like a dull thud, whereas Gua's made a sharper sound, suggesting denser bone. But this was all despite the fact that he'd already x-rayed Gua, already confirming that her bone density was that of a 2-year-old
Right.
human. So I don't know really what possessed him to want to confirm that with a spoon whacking to the head either. But
Right? Because this is what I was thinking. I was like, surely you have more scientific, like, methods, like
yeah,
quantitative methods, rather than just like, oh yeah, I'm just whack you around the head with a spoon. That's giving, yeah.
it's
Again,
crazy,
I want to
isn't it?
save my opinions.
Yeah, and then after that came reaction tests. So both infants were placed in front of a motion camera, and without warning, a revolver was fired behind them. And in this reaction test, Gua reacted faster and sought immediate comfort from her observers. So if you watch the video, as soon as the gun or the revolver goes off, like Donald just jumps in his chair and Gua like jumps and runs and hugs her like observer. So it was very clear in reflexes and coordination that the chimp was outpacing the human child.
Interesting. Like, did he like plan? Like, how did he kind of like plan these out? Like, did he have like a set routine for like these kind of little mini experiments, or was he just randomly like they're just eating their cereal and he's just like walks up behind them and just whacks? Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
how scientific was this? Like, did he actually plan it all out? Like, how did it work?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, by this, like, it sounds like really random, but they actually did have a very meticulous schedule. So every day,
Okay.
remember, this is being done at like a research center as well. So each day began at 7 a.m. with wake up and breakfast at 7:30, followed by sitting at the table until 8:30, and then from 9 until lunch there were just observations, car rides, play sessions, photography, and experiments. And then after lunch at 12:15 came nap time, baths, milk breaks, and more tests between 3:30 and 4. And then dinner was at 6, and then bedtime at 6:30 sharp. So very meticulous schedule, but also like one that would kind of reflect like a mother on maternity leave, or like staying at home and looking after her baby, I guess. So actually within the first 2 weeks, Gua's reflexes were studied extensively, and one thing really stood out is that she struggled with balance when standing upright. So the Kellogg's wondered if it was simply because she was still developing, or if constantly looking up at the taller humans disorientated her. And likely it was both, and the fact that obviously chimpanzees are not made to be like bipedal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, we spoke about that on the Planet of the Apes Exposed episode. We spoke all about the physiology of that. So yeah, I this is wild that this experiment kind of got ahead. I mean, I know you kind of hinted that we're going to speak about it, but for me, I'm most interested in like how this actually affected the child, because it almost sounds
Mhm.
like it's not, I don't know, it's not giving like loving parent. It's just like, oh yeah, you're just like, you're part of our science experiment now, and we're going to put you in this research center and like give you this like really strict routine to live by. But before we, because I'm sure we're going to get to that, or we can talk about it at the
Mhm.
end, because yeah, talking about Gua, how did she actually adapt to living like a human? Like, was she okay? Like, how did it go?
Yeah, so she adapted like surprisingly well, almost like she wasn't wild essentially. Like she fit into the
Yeah.
family. So she slept in a cot with a mattress, linens, and night clothes, exactly like a baby. And when her cot was temporarily removed, she cried out in distress. So her sleep behavior kind of mimics that. of a human child. So she was like cuddling when she was picked up, nodding off like when she was being looked after. And early on, she actually slept more than Donald, but eventually settled into kind of the same one nap routine as him. She also slept through the night, so obviously a feat that many parents would envy. But later, she began making nests from her bedding, much like wild chimpanzees would do in the tree. So
Mm-hmm.
this was obviously not something that she'd been shown, and obviously very suggestive of the fact that there was a natural instinct still very much alive in her as well.
So she's learning, adapting, kind of acting, I guess, like a human by their standards. But how did her, like, I'm interested in how her actual development compared to Donald's as they grew up. Like, was one
Mm.
learning faster than the other or anything like that?
Yeah, so Donald being human, he needed like a stroller as a walking aid, whereas Gua was already mobile and she more used hers as like a toy. But she quickly began mimicking human posture and walking upright, and
So weird.
basically she developed much faster than Donald physically, which I think makes sense, right? I
Mm,
think that's like the nature element feeding in, because obviously baby chimpanzees have to be much more mobile from an earlier age than like a
mm-hmm.
baby human. But she also began pointing at things that she wanted, exactly like a toddler would learn to communicate early on. And the two actually bonded really deeply. So Donald adored his chimp sister and she seemed equally attached. So she would like often run to him whenever he entered a room. And if Gua was scolded or told off, Donald would in return hug her. And also, when
Mm.
another child named Martha, who was around 3 years old, Gua also showed affection too, hugging her, holding her hand, and even like sniffing her in curiosity. And interestingly, Gua was generally outgoing with other children, but shy and timid around adults, which is a behavior like very similar to human toddlers as well. She was initially like very comfortable with animals as well, but a puppy once
Mm.
barked at her, and then she then developed kind of like a fear of animals from that point. So it was kind of
Oh,
again
okay.
reflective of like a child's behavior, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it almost kind of sounds like she's like actually developing some kind of like emotional depth as
Yeah,
well, which I think is
yeah,
really interesting. Did she kind of pick
yeah.
up on any other human like behaviors? Obviously, we spoke about her. I mean, I think the craziest one is like forcing her to walk upright, but yeah.
Mm.
And then obviously, like, yeah, the emotional side of it, but did she pick up anything else?
Yeah, so another thing that she did was when she was punished, like going back to the emotional depth, Guru would become like visibly upset and then kind of approach for affection, like a kiss, as if kind of seeking for forgiveness. And that is like a
Oh.
level of emotional intelligence that usually appears in humans around 18 to 24 months old. So she was kind of like progressing emotionally a lot quicker than Donald. She also learned to open doors. She understood light switches. So she would kind of almost like look up at the light bulb before it was switched on. So she would look at the light switch, see someone was out to switch it on, and then scientists or observers would notice that she would look at the light bulb
Oh,
before it was
that's
physically switched
cute.
on. So she was kind of understanding things like
Mm-hmm.
that. I think also we discussed this on the Planet of the Apes episode, where like the neural connections of chimpanzees versus humans are very different. So
Mm-hmm.
simple things like pat a cake, she couldn't understand, whereas Donald could. But then in other aspects, she outpaced Donald when using a spoon. So she could feed herself cleanly by 13 months, but Donald got there at around 18 months. So, like, obviously, it's fairly similar, but I don't know, like, there's still differences there. And then in
Mm-hmm.
problem solving tasks, she excelled. So, she used tools to pull rewards to her under barriers. And then, obviously, in doing so, she showed this kind of persistence and intelligence and curiosity, which were all hallmarks of like early learning, even in like children as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting that I guess in like some aspects their experiment was kind of like successful because they actually managed to like teach her to do these different things. But I don't know about, you know, how they're kind of like comparing the ages between which they like did certain things. I'm just going to be like a classic scientist and just be like, well, the like age in which humans learn to do most of these things is normally like a range. So maybe Donald took 18 months, but that actually could be, I mean, I don't know personally, but it maybe that could be actually quite late for a human child to learn that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, can you really say that the chimp was doing it quicker? I
Well,
don't know.
that's the thing, right? It's one chimp and one human. Like,
Exactly.
it's the N of one. So it's kind of
Exactly.
hard to compare.
What about like language? Did they ever teach Gua to like speak or say any words?
Right, this is the part that I found really interesting, because we obviously, and if you guys are avid listeners, we obviously covered this in our Planet of the Apes episode, and Liv told us all about the FOXP2 gene, which is found on chromosome 7, and that is associated with speech and is hypothesized to like give us the neural control to utilize the muscles in our vocal tract to talk as we do.
Yeah.
But obviously back then when they were doing this experiment, they didn't know any of this. And this is kind of where the experiment took like maybe a bit of a darker turn. Like, it's already questionable, like the morals behind it is questionable. But Gua's communication essentially stayed physical. So she used to point to her mouth when she was hungry. She used to tug trousers when she needed the toilet. And she used to point in directions or pull or, you know, kind of indicate what she wanted. And her vocal sounds were really limited to like grunts and oohs. And Donald, on the other hand, he began speaking, but actually his speech became stunted. So he obviously was spending so much time with Gua and in isolation of other adults and other children. So he began imitating her instead. So he started barking or screeching and making kind of ape-like calls to express emotion. And then obviously you've got Gua. She really never spoke human words. She could understand them, and it turned out that she could react to about 95 different words, which obviously included commands like no and kiss. And again, if you listen to our Planet of the Apes episode, we actually speak about another chimp called Washo, who was basically raised by two psychologists in the 1960s and 70s, and she was not only the first chimpanzee to learn American Sign Language, but also demonstrated like an impressive ability to actually communicate with her human caregivers using like sign language. And by the time she was 3 years old, she learned to use over 100 different sign. But anyways, listen to that episode as well, guys. That's what I'm saying, because it really kind of compares and relates to this one. But back to Donald, he actually seemed like he learned more slowly than to Gua. And obviously, once he could walk and climb, he caught up to Gua physically, but his language consistently kind of lagged behind like a normal human progression. So again, presumably because in his environment he wasn't interacting with other humans and primarily interacting with a chimpanzee which didn't talk. And by the 9th month, Luella grew concerned because Donald's vocal and social development had essentially regressed. So she decided at that point the experiment needed to come to an end. I mean, I don't know why you didn't think about doing that earlier, but yeah.
Literally. And like, I wonder if they went into this. I mean, obviously, they go into this like wanting to understand chimp psychology, chimp biology, and learn more about Gua. But I wonder if for a second they even considered that something like this might actually happen to Donald. Do you know what I mean? Like, did at any point did they think, oh, like maybe actually it's going to go the complete opposite way, which is kind of what happened, which is really interesting. But I'm scared to ask you this question because I don't know if I want to know the answer, but just because I feel like it's just a sad story. But you know, you just said, oh yeah, like she just decided, okay, I'm just going to end the experiment now. But then what happens to Gua, right? Because then she's part of the family. Oh, I don't know. That makes me sad.
I know.
Like, did they keep her?
No, and this is the really sad part in my opinion, because obviously once the experiment
I'm sorry, I'm going to say that I don't like these people. I don't like them.
Neither
I
do I.
don't.
I think it's so cruel. I think it's
Yeah,
cruel on the
it is
son.
cruel.
I think
It's
it's
cruel to
cruel on
everyone
the
involved.
gym. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like you say, I completely agree with your sentiment of I 100% don't think they even considered for a second that it could negatively affect their child. Because like why
Yeah.
would you do the experiment otherwise? The experiment was to see if you could raise a chimp as human. I just don't think they considered it. That their human would get taught behaviors from the chimp if they were teaching the chimp to be raised as human. But
Mm.
obviously children are sponges, they're gonna like learn from everywhere.
As you were talking as well, I was thinking about the fact that obviously they were like similar age, and because of their undeveloped brains, they probably think they're, I don't know, it's kind of reminds me of like a relationship between twins. So like me and my
Mm,
identical twin, and what you were saying about how they didn't have much interaction, like Donald didn't have much interaction with other children. Me and my twin sister were like that as like young children. We didn't have many friends because we just always had each other. So like when you go to school as an identical twin, you are not worried about making friends because you've got your friends, like you've got your best friend right
mm,
there with you. So I think you do unconsciously make less of an effort to interact with other children
yeah,
around you. And
yeah,
so yeah, I think their relationship probably could be compared to relationship between twins, which I think is really interesting. And you
yeah.
definitely do mimic your twins. Like obviously, you mimic your twins' behavior. So
Mm.
yeah, I think that's really
Yeah,
interesting.
100%. Yeah. Well, the aim was to raise them as brother and sister, and like I said,
Yeah,
if Gua was scolded, Donald would comfort her. So there was very much like a intimate relationship there
yeah,
in
some kind
the
of
way that
emotional
you're describing.
responsibility.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
100%.
interesting.
So despite all that, and despite like the emotional attachment that Donald would have had on Gua and Gua would have had on Donald, on March the 28th, 1932, Gua was taken from the Kellogg's home and sent back
No,
to Robert Yerkes, and then she then became the subject of further experiments, this time under Yerkes' wife Ada. Yeah, it's pretty
I'm
sad.
angry. I'm angry.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, so the Kellogg's, they returned to Indiana and they wrote up their findings and published their book. And Winthrop admitted disappointment. He said that Gua had hit a wall in her development and he had hoped that nurture might override nature. But biology ultimately proved the stronger force. But still, I think Gua showed remarkable human like traits. She obviously was walking upright, she had some toilet training, she understood commands, she was showing like emotional capacity of understanding things and like feelings, and she obviously had very impressive problem solving. So she was very intelligent, but obviously her inability to develop language kind of proved the limits of nurture, which again is something we definitely touched on in the Planet of the Apes episode as well.
Yeah, I think it's very telling the way they kind of speak about this experiment, though, in terms of how much we've progressed in science since this experiment, because they're still very much talking about nature versus nurture. But now, obviously, we know that nature and nurture, like it's not, they're not two completely different things. Like there's an interplay between the two. But one thing I am interested in is how did the public react to this when it came out, because how many people knew about the experiment when it was actually going on? Probably not
Mm,
many, but then
no.
obviously they've wrote this book. So how did people at the time react to it? Because obviously now we're hearing about it, we're like, this is awful. But it was very
Mm.
different times back then.
Well, actually, the results they were published in the American Psychological Journal and later in book form in 1933. And then from that point on, the story spread really fast. And some did hail it as groundbreaking research, but others were like horrified. So critics
Hmm.
condemned the trauma that Gua suffered, much like we are, and expressed that she was ripped from her first biological mother and then later from her adoptive human one. But then the
Yeah,
strongest backlash came from the use of Donald as a test subject as well.
rightly so.
Obviously, 9 months of testing clearly affected him. He'd been startled by gunfire, struck on the head with spoons, frustrated in problem solving tasks, all in the name of science, and also obviously had his progression and like language stunted from being in contact with a chimpanzee and not being socialized with other children. Like, it's just crazy. And in fact, this is the saddest part of the story, guys. Gua and Donald's lives both ended quite tragically. So Gua actually died of pneumonia on the 21st of December in 1933, just shy of her 3rd birthday. And that was only around a year after she left the Kellogg's family. And Donald, he went on to study medicine and psychiatry, perhaps influenced by his own parents maybe, but he then took his own life in 1973 at the age of 43. So whether his unusual upbringing played a role, I guess we'll never know, but it doesn't sound...
That is so sad.
Particularly good.
Wow.
Yeah. Sad. And then Luella and Winthrop Kellogg actually both passed away in 1972. So that was the end of the Child and the Ape experiment. But yeah, it all kind of ended kind of sadly. And nothing really came from it, to be honest.
The biggest thing for me, I think, from this whole story is, and obviously, you know, we don't know why he like tragically took his own life, and that is so sad. And I'm never gonna blame that on what happened to him or this particular experiment, because ultimately we don't know what caused that. However, like, I cannot help but think how traumatized he must have been as a young child to have that chimp taken away from him. I mean, we just spoke about how they basically probably had a bond very similar to twins. So like, that genuinely, out of everything that happened in this experiment, my personal opinion, that would have been the most traumatic thing for him, is to have her all of a sudden taken away from him, because quite evidently he was very emotionally attached, and that's demonstrated by the fact that his own speech regressed and he took on behaviors from the chimp. So I just think that's so awful to just be like, oh yeah, we're done with the experiment now. You're a bit fucked up, but let's take you away from each other now. It actually angers me.
It is sad. It is sad.
Psychologists back then, they were just like, yeah, fancy doing this idea. Right, what's the most fucked up way I can test this? And they just did it. Again, we'll hear more next week, because I have a very similar story for next week. So yeah, you guys are going to have to tune in for that. But thank you, Taz, so much for this episode. As I said, felt so nostalgic to learn about this. You guys will have to let us know your thoughts on this. Like, do you agree with everything we've said? Do you disagree? Do you think there was like some good aspects to this experiment? You have to let us know. You can drop a comment on Spotify, or you can come over to our Instagram or TikTok and let us know in the comments there. But for now, let's get into our new segment for our laboraTEAAA. So as you guys know, every single season we do something different every few episodes for our laboraTEAAA. And this season we are doing a Ask Us Anything. So we are basically giving you guys the chance to ask us absolutely anything. This can be like a more serious question, or it can be just some crazy, stupid, I don't know, another like, what would you do if? It can literally be anything you want. So we're going to be popping these up on our Instagram weekly. So if you have a question for us, you can come over to our Instagram and drop it there, or you could just DM us, leave it on our laboraTEAAA link, whatever you want to do. So I'm excited for that, because I'm intrigued to see what the listeners have asked us. So let's get into our first Ask Us Anything of season 7. But I'm worth it, 'cause I'll slip into your dreams tonight. Okay, so we asked you guys on Instagram to ask us anything for this new laboraTEAAA segment, and I have picked what I think are going to be the funniest or just craziest questions.
Okay.
So let's get straight into this. This one I love. So they said, if you could give your PI or your boss a truth serum, what is the first question you would ask them? I'm so curious what your answer is going to be for this.
Oh my gosh. I think I would ask, what do you have against me? I would love to hear the answer. Like, I would love to hear like an unfiltered answer. Like, whether he's
of
just like,
what he doesn't like about you.
You know what, babe? Just internalize misogyny, and I'll be like, perfect. Thanks for the validation.
Okay.
Okay, what would yours be?
feel like I have to think about this. What would mine be? My answer would be that I would go to one previous supervisor and I would ask him why he told why he told so many lies. So I've told you guys stories about this
Oh my God,
particular boss
yeah.
before, that he constantly lied about things, and it was like always really like stupid white lies. Like he would tell me just like silly little things that he knew how to program in R, but then like he didn't even know how to like navigate the terminal and do really basic things. And like I just think about it regularly, like what was the reason for the white lies? And so like when I went for my job interview, like there was so many white lies told in my job interview. And normally I feel like a lot of people lie in job interviews, but you can kind of understand why they're telling those lies. But with him, it's like I just think, why did you tell me that? To this day, I don't understand why he told me these white lies. And so I would like to ask him and get his honest answer, because I kind of feel like it would be rooted in some insecurity about like specific things that he can't do. And then he's like, oh yeah, like I can do this, I can do that. But where was the logic behind it? Because all of these lies, he should have known that eventually I was going to find out that they were lies. And so
But
I would
maybe
want to know that.
I reckon I'm gonna try and answer it for you, and I
Go
reckon
on.
he knew he had like kind of zero expertise on it, but didn't want to like let you in on that,
Yeah.
so that you didn't think you were entering a job where you were basically gonna set up the
Going to
whole
be
thing yourself.
unsupported. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
Slay. That's what the truth serum would make him say for sure. Okay, moving on to the next question.
What?
This one's cracked me up. You're trapped in a lab for 24 hours with your ex and one piece of lab equipment. What's the setup?
Oh my God.
My ex is going in the
Oh.
centrifuge and I'm turning that bad boy on. That's what I'm doing.
What? You're turning him on, are you?
The centrifuge, not him. His time's run out for that. That ship sailed a long time ago.
Oh gosh, I don't know what mine would be.
I mean, you used to work in like virology labs, so I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff you could do. I mean, I'm just assuming that you want to like hurt your ex in some way, which I shouldn't be promoting this type of violence.
Um, Let me think.
Your hair is slaying, by the way. We need a tutorial on that hair.
Oh, thanks.
That's like very
It's just
Ariana Grande. Love that. Slay.
channeling my Ariana Grande.
Yeah, love that.
It's just a half
Sorry,
up,
go
half
on.
down with a claw clip.
Cute.
I know a, what's it called? Vortexer.
What's
Don't
that?
really know what it would do. I think it would just be annoying.
What is it?
It's like a thing that's like basically like vortex.
Is it like the shaky thing and then you put your test tube on it and like...
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be quite annoying if like someone, I don't know, like... But then just imagine you had like a huge one and you just like kept putting him on it. That's so mature.
Oh god, yeah. Just
No, I feel like
imagine
there's
him, like shaking it around in a little falcon tube, like.
I mean, there has been many times I have wanted to like shake my ex. So yeah, I feel like there's like potential for some really funny answers. So like, I want to hear your guys. Like, you have your ex and one piece of a lab equipment. Tell us what you're doing.
To be fair, we're like, oh, we hate our exes, but there might be people out there who are like, get me in that incubator, babe. Let's get it.
Oh yeah.
Steaming.
So true, actually. So true. Yeah, tell us. I want to know. I want to know.
Oh my god! Do you know what I was
Go
learning
on.
the other day? I was learning how to like fix tissues in paraffin wax, and I was playing with the paraffin wax, and I was just like, it felt really nice. So maybe if you like were still in love with your ex, you could have a little bit of fun with the paraffin wax.
Oh my
You know,
god!
like,
Yes.
it's like a massage
You know how, like...
thing. You know, you can get like hand, I was gonna say hand jobs, I didn't mean hand job. You can get like a hand, what's it called, treatment, that's the word that I'm looking for.
Okay.
Where they put wax on your hand and it like moisturizes it.
Okay,
Oh,
I was thinking
that
more
could be
along
a
the
bit of
lines
fun.
of... Oh yeah, I was thinking along the lines of, you know how they get like candle wax, like, oh, like drip it down.
Oh,
Do you know?
There we go. There we go.
So you could like heat up some paraffin wax and yeah.
You don't have to heat it up, babe. It's already heated for you. Like in the little...
perfect. Well, it's even better than candle wax then, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You don't have to wait around for the candle to make the wax.
Yeah, it comes out a
you.
little spout as well. You just press a little button and it pulls out.
Love that. Is there anything like in the lab people... Oh my God, you know, last week we spoke about the neural glue. If you like wanted your ex back and you didn't want them to leave you, you could like stick you guys together. Do you know what I mean? They can never leave you.
Oh my God. Was like
so
polyethylene glycol or something?
Oh my God, that is a good memory. I love that from you. That is a good memory.
It was something like that.
Taz is really, she really be taking in the science.
I'm listening, babe. I'm listening.
Right, give us your answers, guys. Who want to know? Okay. Next one, final one. Okay. You have just won a Nobel Prize. What do you say in your acceptance speech that immediately gets you cancelled?
Oh, gosh.
Cancelled by who is my question. Like, who's cancelling me?
Yeah, who's cancelling me? Is it the scientists or is it like the general public? Because I feel like they're two separate answers.
I'm going to say like the scientific community.
That would be pretty easy then.
Go on.
I think they'll just hear me speak and they'll be like, what the fuck?
Tune into the podcast and hear us talking about people pulling wads of cash out of their vagina.
Well, there we go then.
Oh, and by the way, I performed in the same show. That just get me.
Oh my God, you wouldn't have to do an acceptance speech. You would just do an acceptance performance. That would immediately get me cancelled. Like I would be cancelled so quick. So 100%. That's it. Yeah, so you just have to get up and perform on stage your like performance that you did at the weekend, and I would just start speaking. I'd be cancelled
pretty fucking quick.
Yeah, I would just start speaking. Honestly, sometimes I speak at conferences and I think people are like,
oh my God, same. This is another reason I don't particularly like, I shouldn't talk really in scientific settings because every time I talk, I genuinely feel people like staring at me like, what are you talking about? And like, I can just tell that, you know, when you think to yourself, why the fuck did I just say that? Or just like, I'm just like, oh, just shut up. I think I'm too opinionated. That's my thing.
Yeah, I also think like we maybe talk like too colloquially for scientists in general.
Yeah, we're like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I know, that's what I'm talking about. But actually, do you know what I found out is that it's less of a thing here in Australia, because I think in the UK, obviously me and you have similar accents, and I feel like our accents come with a certain connotation of like not being educated, not gonna lie. And I get that all the time. I don't know if you do, but like I get it all the time. Like people immediately assume my intelligence level just on the way that I talk, and that's just purely because of my accent. Whereas here in Australia, obviously I just sound English to people. Like there's no Southeast London accent, there's no Essex accent, like I'm just English here. So it's actually kind of scary how much I've noticed the different people. I think people take me a lot more seriously here because I have an English accent over like
really
an Australian one. Yeah, it's pretty sad.
And I guess they kind of like associate English with like posh, educated, classy, like all of those things.
Good universities. Yeah, exactly. So they actually, even though I'm treated opposite here than I am at home.
Interesting.
Crazy.
Okay. That is interesting. I mean, yeah, I am like very strong, like, well, I wouldn't say I'm very strong, but like I'm Essex accent, bottle of water. Do you know what I mean? And
yes, same.
See, I always say, do you know what I mean? Like me and my friend, we always talk about this. How often we say, do you know what I mean? And like we don't even say, do you know what I mean? It's all just one word now. Like, do you know what I mean? Why do I whine it like that? Like it's so annoying.
We all edit our podcast and we're like, why the fuck do we say like so much?
Oh my God, don't even get me started on the likes.
If you guys like this.
If you guys listen and think we say like a lot, just know that we cut a lot of them out. So like, imagine. See, I just said it. All right, let's try and go the rest of this episode, which will only be a few minutes, so we can do this without saying the L word. Okay. So, yeah, if you listen and think we say it a lot, you should hear it without us saying it. Oh my God, I feel like I'm talking
Also,
like,
if
I
you
said
listen,
it! No.
you lasted like all of like 10 seconds.
I'm
If
talking
you
very
listen,
similar to a robot.
if you listen and you think the sentences sound really disjointed, it's because we've said the L word about 10 times in that sentence, and we've been like, no,
And we've had to
we
cut it
can't
out.
say it that many times. So we do
we do try
apologize for
to,
that.
yeah, we tried to save you from it. Just know that. Anyway, I'm not gonna lie. I have to wrap this episode up because I cannot do this. I can't. I feel under pressure. So that does wrap
You
up
actually talk a
our.
lot slower.
Do I? Wow. Okay. I guess it's because I can't use my filler words, so I have to think about what I'm saying, and so I naturally speak slower.
Yeah.
I think we sound good. Like we sound good.
Oh,
We sound good.
yeah, we do.
Okay.
Maybe we
No,
should
I give
just
up. I
let us
actually can't do
say.
this. I can't do this. That wraps up our Ask Us Anything segment for our laboratory. We will be doing a few more of these throughout season 7 Twisted. And so, like I said, if you guys want to get involved, then make sure you come over. Stop laughing, Taz. Make sure you come over to our Instagram so that you can drop us any questions that you want to ask. But with that, that rounds off episode 2. So we will see you guys same time next week for episode 3 of Twisted. Bye, everyone.
Bye.